So I've worked as a professional developer for about 6 years now. But when I first started out, I came across the same catch-22 that most people do. You need to get a job for experience, but you also need experience to get a job. So for my first job, I ended up being incredibly underpaid and underrespected, but after my first couple of low-paying gigs doing web development at small companies, it became easier somewhat after that to get my foot in the door at different places. I didn't have a mentor when I was a young programmer who would give me like advice on how to build my career, or how to approach these things, how to ask for money when you're offered a job, how to prepare for interviews and all of that stuff. So there's a lot that I had to learn on my own. So I thought that I would make a small series of videos just to talk about some of the things I've learned over the years, just professionally, getting experience, stuff about pay, stuff about where to, preparing for interviews, finding jobs, quitting jobs, I don't know, something. I quit jobs a lot, but that's just me. So, yeah, if you don't have an older developer to look up to, like I didn't really have anyone to go to, so that if you don't have an older developer to look up to and to give you tips on these things, hopefully these talks will help you out instead. And if you have any questions, let me know. If I don't know something, I'll ask around. But these are just kind of about my own experiences and my own thoughts on what you can do to kind of build your career or get a little bit of an advantage when it feels like you're kind of like all the cards are stacked against you and you don't get any of the data. You just have to figure everything out for yourself from scratch. So, this first video is about gaining experience. So first off, internships. One mistake I made as a student was not getting an internship. Here in Kansas City, there are actually quite a few companies that offer internships to people in computer science and computer engineering. But I was a tired, disgruntled college student. I wanted to spend my summers working on my own games rather than working for somebody else. And when it came to finding my first job, that little bit of extra experience probably would have helped me find something better. Having an internship not only says that you have some workplace experience programming, but also that you have some experience in a professional world. This means working on a team, not just a college team where everybody bails and you have to do all the work yourself anyway. It also means that you've seen how the software development lifecycle works. Maybe you're familiar with some tools and methodologies being used, like professional grade IDEs, a debugger, source control, ticketing systems, testing frameworks, and more. And if you have an internship with a company, you also have a good chance of getting offered a full-time job at that place once you've graduated from college. To some extent, companies are pretty shallow. Even if you've spent a ton of time working on your own projects and put that on your resume, having an established company on your resume, even as an internship, is essentially a way for that company that you interned with to vouch for you. That being said, it also does look good on your resume or portfolio when you work on programming projects in your spare time and post them up there. It shows that you really like programming and don't just see it as a job. Now, I personally don't see anything wrong with compartmentalizing and just having software engineering be the job and having a bunch of other stuff that you do in your spare time. But companies can be shallow, and someone who codes for the sake of coding can seem like a person who is going to work harder on the code or just stay more up to date, which really that's not the case. If you're a professional, you're going to stay up to date with your field anyway. It's part of the job. You don't have to be madly in love with your job to do a good job. Really, that's not even my experience. As somebody who codes in my own spare time, and has a lot of projects always going on, I actually find it harder to work at an office job, and I end up being a lot more discontent. So, there are all kinds of people. Some people code for work, some people code for their enjoyment in general, and some people are going to be good office employees and some people aren't. But anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. It's good to show off your experience. I started working on game programming when I was like 10 years old, And I always was afraid to put it on my resume when I was younger. Sure, I think Rorinth is pretty cool, but I was always afraid of what employers would think. Like, for example, I went to meet with some recruiters one time, and I did put, these games I've published on my resume towards the bottom, and, we got Rorinth, Lynxion, Fin and Kit, Gift Grab, whatever else. And the recruiter was like, the titles of these games are all stupid. Like, I don't know if he realized that those were games that I published, or if he just thought I was working for someone else when we published those. But he was just kind of sat there, read the list, and was like, these names suck. I was like, ah. Anyway, whether or not a recruiter thinks your game titles and your love of alliteration is shitty, don't be afraid to put your experience on your resume. Your own projects, whatever you work on. Don't undercut yourself, because teaching yourself enough to build some sort of product, even if it's a small product, if it's a little arcade game, if it's a little app, if it's a little website, it's still a pretty big achievement to teach yourself that stuff. Number 3, build a portfolio. In addition to whatever you're building purely for fun, make sure to build a portfolio as well and spend quite a bit of time on it. If your city has a ton of C# web development positions, for example, you might learn how to build a website with C# and ASP.NET MVC, and then put something on your portfolio. You could create a simple blog or a mock website with like an online store with some mock checkouts, not real checkouts, don't have people put in their credit card information, but just something like, these companies might do document management, or these companies that might do databases for schools or something. You can kind of just come up with a mock business idea and then build a website around it and have it up there on the portfolio to show that, yeah, you can implement something like this. Also spend some time learning different tools. Build some small projects with those tools and add those to your portfolio. You can always say, yes, I have experience with Java, not professional experience, just what I've done on my own with Android development or game development or whatever else, but at least you can say you have some experience with it. So for example, you could build an app that's just a grocery store app, but that gives you some experience with the Android SDK or whatever the iOS stuff is. Or you could build mock websites for businesses, or even your own portfolio website from scratch. Or it could be just little games, or using cool little tools like OCR or text-to-speech, and just kind of coming up with different cute little apps with that. And if you're not shy about having your source code be public, I would definitely suggest setting up a GitHub account and putting your projects on there, because sometimes recruiters for companies will be looking through GitHub to find somebody that they'll reach out to. It's also good just for people to be able to see that, yes, you can write clean code and not a huge horrible mess, even though, in the past my old code was all pretty bad, and having stuff be open kind of gives you a little bit extra push to try to keep it clean, try to refactor, learn refactoring techniques, and have stuff be presentable and readable. Also set up a LinkedIn account, so this way you can keep in touch with other people you've met, so as you're building your network, it's easy to just see other people's updates. But it also lets recruiters and other people find you through your contacts, or it can help employers easily look at a web page that has a lot more information about you and your experience and just your interests in general than what you can fit on a 2-page resume. And once you've been building and working on your portfolio, also just take the next step and publish your work. It's super easy to publish stuff these days, either through Google Play or other marketplaces online for software apps or games or whatever. So even if you don't get on Steam, there's always itch.io. And it's easy. You just, with Google Play, you pay $25 and you can post as much as you want up there, and there's not really any sort of barrier to entry beyond $25. You can make a little bit of money through your app sales or through ads, and that also means that you can say, yes, you've published something, you've had users, you've gotten feedback, you've gone through the process of researching and designing and implementing and testing and debugging, getting feedback, kind of responding to that feedback, kind of the whole software development life cycle, but in a microcosm, just in a small app package. And during interviews, it'll also give you some insight into questions you might want to ask them at the company, like how do they test their products, how often do they release updates, and other things. Now, I'll try to post a video later about what you might want to do during interviews and what kind of questions you might want to ask, but this one's about the experience beforehand, so just keep in mind that the key to good interviews is asking good questions, and by having your own kind of experience that you give yourself by creating your own products helps with that. Now, as far as getting more jobs listed on your resume, another good method of building experience is by doing contract work. The good thing about web and app development is that even small companies need websites and maybe even apps. So you can take on smaller jobs with less risk than jumping in and trying to contract with a big company who wants some big, complex, sophisticated solution. I mean, there are small jobs out there. You might reach out to family or friends, just check on Craigslist, do a posting somewhere. For example, you might have a family member who's running a small business from their home and needs a website that has information about their services. Like maybe they do handyman work and it needs a phone number and a list of features, maybe some pricing information. And nothing really complex like doing credit card transactions or logging in and registering accounts. Just something with information on it. Or you might have a friend who's in a band and their band needs a website. It has concert dates, maybe just embed a Google Calendar or something. A gallery page, maybe figure out how to use an API from Flickr or Instagram or whatever to embed photos from where they're uploading into their website. Or other things. It just gives you a chance to work with more tools and more languages. So, you're learning new things, you're making a little bit of money, and you can add your work to your portfolio and your resume. You might also present this contract work as your own business as well, to give it more of an official appearance. In the US, you can automatically just have a sole proprietorship. There's not really any paperwork, and it's all just your own taxes. And it's also not too difficult to register a single-member LLC, which offers a little bit extra legal protection, but the taxes for a single-member LLC is still like fall through, where it's still basically all your own taxes. It's kind of made to be simplified. But if someone wants to sue you, you have a little bit of protection, which hopefully no one would want to sue you, but I guess it's just a nice thing to have, just in case. And the last thing I have to talk about today for building your experience and getting your foot in the door somewhere is to make sure to build a professional network. This can be classmates at your college, people you meet through local meetups or tech conferences, previous jobs, or other locations. Having a network means that you can reach out and see if there are any opportunities available, have some people to compare notes with as far as pay or interviewing or other places that might be good to work for. And it also means that people know you, so when a job comes up that they think you would be good for, they might refer somebody that they know to you. My first couple of programming jobs I got thanks to people I knew through school. I even met somebody on a dating site one time who eventually ended up being my reference to their company, and I worked there for like a year and a half. Now, dating sites aren't exactly the best way to build your professional network, but joining a site like meetup.com and finding various tech communities to hang out with is. Here in Kansas City, we have groups around Python, Unity, JavaScript, .NET, information security, and a lot of other topics. So just being part of a social group can help out with building your network. Whee! Yay! Okay, so that was a few tips for building up your experience and doing some of the work ahead of time that will help you get into an interview. Do you have any other tips that might be good for getting a company to recognize you? Or do you have any experiences where something backfired and you would suggest not trying it out? Next time I'll try to post up a video of what I do to prepare for job interviews. If you have any questions related to programming, computer science, jobs, or whatever else, even pianos, crocheting, art, potatoes, something, leave a comment and I'll try to respond with a rambly video. Thanks, goodbye.